Minister in the presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, has spoken tough against what she's described as the deliberate collapsing of government by the private sector. This after the British multinational bank Standard Chartered admitted to currency manipulation and offering to pay a fine. The Competition Tribunal is now investigating 27 other lenders. These are believed to have been part of a scheme to fix the rand-dollar currency between the years 2007 and 2013. To help us understand the impact of this on ordinary South Africans, joining me is the Executive Director at FirstSource Money, Redge Nkosi. Mr. Nkosi, thank you very much for your time. Let me begin with the fine that I would like to think has gotten a number of stakeholders hot under the collar. This bank admitting to this and saying that they were going to pay the fine of, I think, is just above 40 million rand. Let's start there first. Is this a good enough deterrent?
Absolutely not. I think we need a lot more than that. The Competition Commission is telling us that about 1 trillion rand was being traded in a day during that period up to recently. Therefore, 40 or 42 is absolutely unacceptable. However, the Competition Commission itself, I think, is bound by some regulations. The competition law does stipulate, ways in which you can charge these people. So, well, we have to go with it. I think it has to change quite fundamentally if we're going to have to ensure that these manipulators are fully held, to account.
As indicated earlier at the start of this conversation, the minister in the presidency, not mincing her words in her description of what she says is an attempt by the private sector to weaken and even collapse the South African government. Remind us, Reggie, as to what it cost the economy, this rand-dollar manipulation.
It's very, very expensive, actually. You should remember that what they're doing is they're depressing the rand. And by depressing the rand, inflation obviously comes in. And inflation has to be fought through interest rates. So it means the Reserve Bank has to raise interest rates. And we know what it means. It means economic activity has to come down. The economy won't be growing. Taxes won't be few. It means the budget deficit will obviously have to go higher. And you have to pay debt on any borrowings that you have to. You have to pay very high interest rates on any money you have to borrow from whether from outside the country, or even from the very same banks. And with all that, the economy is unlikely to grow. It means a great deal of challenges for the economy. Unemployment, poverty will continue to escalate as a consequence of these individuals or private sector companies manipulating the currency. It's not new, by the way. Let's remember in 2001, around December, when President Mbeki was visiting China, they did the same thing. Kevin Workford, you may remember this gentleman called Kevin Workford. He did tell us that, in fact, there was a manipulation. President Mbeki initiated some rand commission. Unfortunately, there wasn't much that came out of it, and they buried that report. It's not new. South Africa is, in fact, unfortunately, going to be experiencing it going forward, for as long as the Reserve Bank sleeps on the wheel.
And you go back to this history, very interestingly, a number of extracts from newspaper headlines dating back to that time. There is one specifically of the 8th of September 2016, quoting Pravin Gordhan at the time, and I suspect he would have been our finance minister at that time, a direct quote saying, "There is no need for a judicial probe into South African banks." Just some of the headlines at that time. Do you think that perhaps this is the time to drill deeper given this admission? Because what Standard Chartered is also committing to do is to expose those that it worked in concert with.
Absolutely, very, very urgent. We need that inquiry now, and indeed now. But also, we should wonder what the Reserve Bank has been doing all this time. In 2001, when this happened, they didn't do much. It is at that particular point in time that they should, in fact, started to call all these banks to account. They did nothing. Remember, there are two elements to this manipulation. There's what we call the offshore market and the domestic market. It seems what happened here has something to do with the offshore market. But even if it's an offshore market, the Reserve Bank doesn't have much, capacity to check on what happens there. But it can introduce measures in which it should be checking. It does check the domestic market, but what has it done? What has it told us about this? The Reserve Bank deserves to be questioned about this. Otherwise, it will be seen to be colluding with these banks that are essentially destroying the economy. So the minister and the presidency is correct. But we need harsher reforms in the Reserve Bank, in the Treasury, to ensure that this never happens again.
You mentioned interest rates that would have gone up, and that immediately has a direct impact on the ordinary South African like you and I, because debt becomes impossible, or should we say difficult, to contend with when interest rates are high. The people, the ordinary people of South Africa that would have been affected by these actions, we've already spoken about the bank committing to pay a fine, and you have said it's not nearly enough as a deterrent. But the question is, would an ordinary South African have any recourse given the impact of this behavior?
Class action, I think. They should have that if the government fails to act quite urgently. Remember, banking is a public good. It's not supposed to be a private good. It's a public good. That, in fact, delivering a service that's supposed to be a state service. Okay? It's just like a road, infrastructure that we build. Banking is therefore a national good that should, in fact, be taken care of each time a bank transacts. Must transact in the interest of the nation as a whole, not for their private gains. That they are allowed to do that is because there are some provisions, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this stops them to be a public good. I think we need urgent reforms in this system. The Reserve Bank has not been performing as it should. It's exceptionally incompetent. And this is where we find ourselves, that the rest of the community or the rest of the country is indeed suffering as a consequence of this ineptitude that we see from the Reserve Bank and the collusion that's there now, the private sector as a whole.
Standard Chartered is a UK-based bank. It says it is going to talk about those that were doing this kind of thing, and the assumption is that there should be, and possibly must be, local banks that were engaged in this behavior. Do they have to wait for Standard Chartered to implicate them, or do they come out now and tell us, yes, we did this, and this is what we commit to doing in order to repent for our actions?
Yeah, they are turning to their sins. Actually, Maria Ramos did accept some few years ago that indeed ABSA was involved in this. Unfortunately, nothing happened. Tito Mboweni was even asking, but we don't have evidence. I do not know what evidence Tito was looking for. Maria did accept that there was collusion in the foreign exchange market, and that should have been the time. I'm wondering why these others are still quiet. I mean, the problem here is that these banks have become a law into themselves. It is time the rest of society, the whole country, stood up to say, we cannot take this anymore. Our lives, the economy is in danger. We're already having an economy that's not working, in large measure because of the Reserve Bank and Treasury, and of course, with the collusion now from these private banks. I do not know what it is that they're waiting for. They should have, in fact, come quite openly to the Competition Commission and the Reserve Bank. The Reserve Bank should actually know this because they monitor these issues, to say, here we are. It's unfortunate that they had to wait for Standard Chartered Bank in London.
Final question to you, Reggie. The Reserve Bank, I mean, since we started this conversation, the word Reserve Bank has not moved from your lips. And so it makes sense because they are the custodians of banking in South Africa. They are, interestingly, going to be coming out this Thursday to announce on yet another rates decision. The Reserve Bank governor is not known to deviate from monetary policy issues and confront certain matters that are in the public domain, or should we say current affairs. Do you think this could be the time? This is incumbent upon him to address this head-on.
Absolutely. It's absolutely urgent for the governor to come out clean as to what has been happening before him, during his tenure, and right now as we speak. It's very, very urgent. Remember, these things have been happening elsewhere, not just in South Africa. In Malaysia, we had a similar challenge. What did the Malaysian government do? They quickly pulled the offshore market into the domestic one so that they can monitor it. India, the same thing. The Reserve Bank of India did the same thing recently and started an investigation which has led or is leading to the Reserve Bank of India ensuring that they monitor all these transactions, because price discovery becomes quite a challenge for the domestic market. So the governor must come out very openly. We do not want statements like the ones he issued about the Pala issue. We want clear accountability for the Reserve Bank and indeed the government as a whole.
Well, we're going to have to wait and see. Redge Nkosi, Executive Director at FirstSource Money. Thursday is upon us. Thank you very much, Reggie, for your time.